I'm delighted to be with you here today. For those of you who have never met me before, allow me to start with an introduction. Now, this video clip is going to be quite short. I'm trying to keep it down to about 30 minutes at the max. And normally that's enough time for me to give my introduction. But seeing that I have a limitation on time, I cannot tell you everything about myself. And I think it's probably best if I start by explaining what has led me to where I am today and this video I'm producing today. Now, every time I talk to people, I understand and I've come to realize that most people have three questions in their mind if they've never met you before or if they know nothing about you. The first question is, who are you? Now, some of you watching are probably asking that same question. The second question is, what do you have to share with me? And I understand that, and I'll make sure that in the next few minutes I provide you with something that you consider to be worthy of the investment of your time. The third and the final question is, why should I care? Now, I'll let you make a decision for yourself based on what I share. It is my honest desire, but also my honest wish that the next few minutes mark a turning point in your life. Now, let me take you back a few years into my life. And I want to start on an evening. It was a cold winter evening. I was in my flat in London, but I was going through a very challenging period of my life. Incredibly difficult period. I was falling short of my goals. I was financially broke. I had more money going out of my accounts than I had coming in. But also I could see some of my other dreams. Dreams of, good health and wealth, dreams in terms of my spiritual growth, all falling apart. And during that trying phase, I found that my self-esteem and my self-image became really low. As I sat there in my living room, I reached out for some distraction. The thoughts going through my mind were so negative that I knew that I had to do something to change the thoughts in my head. So I reached out and I grabbed a book. The book was sitting on my shelf. I thought in my mind that was probably the best way to distract myself. As I started to read the book, I got drawn into the words in the book. And as I read, I noticed something quite interesting after a couple of minutes. I noticed that I had tears running down my eyes, uncontrollably. Now, this had never happened to me before. It was a shock. As soon as this happened, I realized that something in the book resonated deep within me. For the first time, I had found someone who had been through a similar experience like I was going through. And it felt as though there was a connection. And it felt as though the words and the pictures painted in words by the author were for me. Now, the feeling I had and the tears I had running down my cheeks were tears of happiness and joy and excitement because I found a way. Now, almost instantly, I found that I had another feeling within me. And this time around, it was a feeling of sadness, a feeling of regret. And as I connected within me to understand what that feeling was, I understood and I could see that the feeling was one as a result of the fact that I realized that the book I was reading, I had bought the book a couple of years before, and that book had been sitting on my shelf all this while, gathering dust. You see, the feeling of sadness was as a result of my understanding and the recognition that my ignorance was a choice, and it came with a very big price tag. That experience led me into who I've become today. By reading, I started to develop an appetite, a hunger, a desire for learning. You see, I came to understand through that experience that there are two ways of learning. You can learn from your experiences, normally through your mistakes, or you can learn from mentors. You can learn from people who have succeeded in an area where you're hoping to succeed. Now, both paths will lead you to success. The level of success you achieve will vary. In many ways, my recommendation to anyone who wants to become more than they are today is simply learn from your experiences, but be humble to combine your experiences with other people's experiences. That gave me a lifeline, because I had gotten to the point in my life where I felt there was no hope. That reignited and rekindled the fire I had within me. You see, before that experience, I had made a decision. I had made a choice. The choice I had made was that I was going to pursue my dreams. As a matter of fact, a number of years before then, I had sadly lost a brother. And one of the most impactful experiences from the loss of my brother was during his burial, when he was laid to rest. You see, when I stood there and I watched as his coffin was being laid down into the ground, I didn't just have a feeling of sadness in my heart. I realized that I was also witnessing the burial of all of his dreams, all of his goals, all of the things he wanted to do. He was an architect. All of the buildings he was going to design. I was an engineer. All of the buildings and projects we could have worked together as a team on. I could see all of the books he was going to write, the places he was going to travel to, perhaps the poetry he was going to compose, the inventions, all of the great things he had spoken about all of his life. I could see all of that being laid into the ground with him. And that sparked a desire in me to pursue my dreams. I made a decision, I packed up my bag, and I left my country of birth, Nigeria, West Africa, for London, England. I had nothing, I knew no one, I didn't even know how I was going to survive beyond the first month. All I knew was that I had a dream. And that is all you really need in many cases. That's what you need to get started. You just simply need to give yourself the permission to dream. Now, with that dream and that burning desire, I found a way. I found a way and I arrived in London, England. And I thought, and I underestimated what it would take from me. I underestimated the resolve I needed to make my dreams a reality. And after a number of years, I found myself in that cold winter evening. Now, I share this with you for a reason. Many of you watching have dreams. Many of you have aspirations of what you want from the future. I want to say to you that for many of you, your dreams may not become a reality. Now, I don't say that to be negative. I say that because I want to be real. I had a burning desire. I had a passion for the future. But a burning desire and passion without strategy leads to failure. What I had was a desire, what I had was a dream. What I failed to do was to convert that dream into a goal by documenting that dream in written form and then converting those goals into a plan. And then with the plan, I had to work out a strategy. You see, I missed out on the most fundamental elements of what it takes to make a dream a reality. If you take out the process of goal setting, if you take out the planning process, if you take out the strategizing process, it doesn't matter how much action you're taking, you could fail. I was raised by an amazing father and an incredible mother. And one of the things my father used to say was, if you work hard, and if you're loyal, and if you stay focused, you will succeed. Now, from the experiences I've had from life, I think there was something missing in that piece of advice. And I say that and I share that simply because in many parts of the world, some of the hardest working people are the poorest paid. You can have a dream, you can have passion, you can have a burning desire, but if you don't have the strategy to support that plan, that dream, that goal, you might fail. Now, this leads me to what I want to talk about, which is the value and the importance of education. You see, strategies don't just fall from the sky. Strategies have to be studied, strategies have to be learned, then they should be executed in a vigorous way, and the appropriate, continuous, and constant never-ending improvement needs to be implemented. From that evening, that cold winter evening, the passion in me for education was developed. And that started to change the trajectory of my life. You see, now I had education and inspiration. To succeed in life, you need education, but you must combine your education with inspiration that leads to motivation. You see, if you're simply educated and you have no motivation, then you're simply an educated derelict. You're one of those people who knows so much but refuses to act on what you know. On the other hand, if you're someone who is very motivated but you're really an idiot, then what you have is a motivated idiot. So the right proportion and the right balance of both education and motivation are essential. And that is what I want to share with you in the next 10-15 minutes. To make your dreams a reality, you have to become a student of life. Now, one of the most important and valuable lessons I learned from my reading, and it started by just simply reading one book, but that book inspired me to search for more. You see, from reading just one book, I came to understand that the author had captured beautifully in words what took him about 50 years to learn. 50 years to learn. And in 4 hours, I had read everything that took someone 50 years to learn. Now, I call that leveraging time. That means I didn't have to apply the same level of efforts. I didn't have to invest the same level of resources, especially the most important resource of all, which is time. I could simply replicate his success. That led me to the conclusion that success leaves behind clues. And the best thing you can do for yourself is find success and replicate it. The word replicability is one of the most important words in life. It comes from the word replicate. The word replicate means that you can follow by using the same principles, if applied in the same fashion, if applied in the same process, you can get the same results. And I think that is what you have to do. If you want to be successful, you have to study success. If you want to be wealthy and happy, you have to study wealth and happiness. If you want to be more loving, you have to study what it means to love. Whatever you want in life, you have to first make it a study. When you've studied it, the second thing you have to do is identify people who have succeeded in an area where you're aspiring or you're hoping to be a success. When you identify them, what you have to do is then study them. You've studied the process, now you have to study the individual. When you study the individual, then it's time to apply what you've learned. You see, knowledge is not the potential of power alone. Knowledge has to be understood. If you apply knowledge without the understanding, the outcome changes very easily. Because knowledge has to be, first of all, comprehended and then applied in the right way to get the desired results. If you alter the knowledge, you alter the results. I'll give you a good example of this. If you have a glass of water in your hand and you're about to drink it, that water you drink will nourish you. That water has compositions. It has 2 parts of hydrogen and 1 part of oxygen. We call it hydrogen dioxide. Some other people call it hydrogen oxide. That same parts of what makes that water nourishing, if altered, changes. Now, if I decide I want to mix 2 parts of hydrogen with 2 parts of oxygen instead of 1 part, what I've created is a different compound. It's called hydrogen peroxide. Now, hydrogen peroxide will kill you if you drink it. Hydrogen dioxide will nourish you if you drink it. Same component parts applied in a different way, but also applied in different proportions. Now, the reason I use that example is to simply say this to you. If you're going to study success and if you want to be successful, if you want to study wealth and if you want to be wealthy, if you want to study happiness and if you want to be happy, you have to study how things work. And then you have to be willing to apply the same principles, to follow the same ideas, to apply the same recommendations as those who have succeeded. Until you start to get the outcomes that you want, it's important you don't change the results. And that is where replicability comes in. So I want you to think about your life and think about areas in your life where you have dreams and goals. And ask yourself the question, am I willing to become a student in those areas? Now, I consider my success today, and that is a subjective word, success, but I consider my success today to be completely down to the principle of what I call discipleship. And what is discipleship? It's simply coming from the word disciple. And the word disciple comes from the word discipline, the discipline of study. And through the discipline of study, I've been able to apply what I know, and I'm starting to see the results that I want. Now, everything I'm sharing with you now may be something new to you. It also could be something that you're already familiar with. So I'm going to say one thing, and I think this might be the defining moment in this video for you. Now, everything I've shared with you, you have one of 3 choices. Number 1, you can accept what I've shared with you. You can reject it, and that's okay. And finally, you can choose to simply neglect it. Now, I'm not asking that you accept completely what I said. I'm also not asking, and I will recommend that you do not reject it. And also, lastly, I would recommend that you do not neglect it. What I would ask you to do is wear the mind and the mindset of a child. See yourself like a child and be curious about the information I've shared with you. And one of the greatest qualities of all the scientists and people who really changed the world is they had a mind of curiosity. They had a mind of curiosity. They had this passion for adventure. And so what I'd like you to do is take the information I'm sharing with you and ask yourself one simple question. Can this information help me achieve my dreams and goals? What we tend to do is ask the wrong question, which is normally, is this information consistent with what I already know? Rather, I want you to think about it from the point of view of, can this information help me achieve my dreams and goals? If the answer is yes, then use it. If the answer is no, then discard it. You can dismiss it. If the answer is I don't really know, then yes, you might want to neglect it. It's all a choice. That brings me down to the most fundamental part of the session, and that is, what choice are you going to make? You see, a pivot is a metaphor for arriving at a place whereby you must change direction. You must change direction. It's a turning point in your life where you're presented with an opportunity to either continue in the direction that you're going or to change and move in the direction that you should be traveling. That happens by choice. I believe that you have been destined for a great life. I also believe that you have greatness within you, that you are engineered for success. But you see, your destiny is a matter of choice, not chance. You have to make decisions and choices. I have to make decisions and choices for myself. And even when we make the decisions, we have to keep course correcting. And so, I want to encourage you and recommend that what I've shared with you is not simply dismissed. I want you to just go away and think about what I've shared with you. If you feel that you want to study more and you want more information, then of course you can subscribe to my YouTube channel. I always produce and share some of my thoughts on a daily basis. On the other hand, you can reach out to me on any of the social media accounts and tell me what you think. Now, for those of you who want to be real students and who want to learn, there are three things you need. Just three things you need. Number one, in all of my sessions, I'll recommend that you come with a pen. I recommend you have a journal and you have a winning attitude. Now, let me go through the first two so you can understand why it's important. Now, I'm not suggesting in any way that this is some form of a classroom learning process. But what I've found is that whenever I spend some time to read something or listen to something that I've already experienced before, that my level of learning increases. As a matter of fact, you haven't really learned something until you're able to teach it to someone else at a level that they can understand. If you can do that, then you've really learned. But also what I've found is that when I read a book for the second time or the third time, when I listen to perhaps a video or an audio message for the second, third or fourth time, that I start to see something in myself that I never knew existed before. It's rarely about what I see in the book. Obviously, when I read the book for the second time, the third time, the fourth time, I see things that I didn't see the first time, yes. But more importantly, I start to realize things about myself that I never knew existed. You see, the whole purpose of this video I've done for you is simply to create the environment whereby the greatness in you, the voice in you, can start to speak to you. The word education comes from the word educo, which means to draw out. And I see my relationship with you as being one whereby I simply create the environment. I stir you with pictures and words using the right emotions to allow the thoughts that are perhaps dormant in you to come out to the surface, to allow the pictures and the dreams in you to be reawakened. My life today is different from what it was a number of years ago, simply because I made a decision to become a student, to embrace continuous learning. And I would always be indebted to that book that I read, because without that experience, I perhaps could have been going through life through the failure approach where you try and you fail. Nothing wrong with that. But I believe in taking the shortcut to the destination you want to get to and arriving there as quickly as you can. I want to thank you for your time. It's Mensah Oteh. God bless.